This is a city, and despite popular belief, there's actually several different definitions for what it is. In the US, it's defined by each state. So in somewhere like New York, it would be a municipal area that is incorporated with its own government and boundaries, and it's granted a city charter by the state. Cities usually have mayors, a council, and even a court. There's also villages. These are usually smaller, but not always. In Wisconsin, where I'm from, it's another form of incorporated government that isn't a ton different, but they need as few as 150 people and don't have the same urban requirements. Anyway, that leaves us with one more, a town or an unincorporated area. These are technically different, and towns have a lot of different definitions, but we'll focus on unincorporated areas, which are simply areas that aren't incorporated and go off of county law and governance. There's a lot of fascinating government stuff that comes with these unincorporated communities, but something really interesting is that there are a lot of these that people think are large cities. I mean, there are a ton of unincorporated communities with over 100,000 residents, and the best part of it, every one of them has a reason for why they are the way they are, and that's what I want to look over today. I want to talk about America's largest unincorporated communities and why they are the way they are. Super quickly before we start this video though, please consider subscribing to the channel. We make geography content and city content like this every week. So if you enjoy the video and the work I put in, subscribing helps me out a ton. Thank you. Now, I know everyone imagines unincorporated areas as a rural wasteland with a few rundown houses, but it's such a flexible term, and plenty of large areas go by this designation. So it's really not all that unbelievable. I personally just find it very interesting why a city of more than 200,000 residents would be unincorporated, rather than just becoming a city. So let's not wait around, and let's get into a few that you might not expect. An honorable mention at 11th place is East Los Angeles, California, which has a population of 114,000. Now, you may not have heard of East Los Angeles. It's a suburb basically just outside of downtown, and it's known for mostly being a lower income area in the metropolitan area and being residential, both of which are important here. It was originally called Belvedere, referring to neighborhoods like Belvedere Gardens in the south part of the city, but it basically slowly became East Los Angeles purely off people calling it that, and finally changed its name officially. It's continued as a lesser-known version of LA, but with 114,000 residents, you'd think it would already be a city, but no. Remember when I mentioned it's known as a lower-income area? Well, currently the county handles most of its services, like garbage and police. Sure, there have been pushes to incorporate, but most of these are met with studies showing it's just not financially viable, and there would immediately be a massive deficit if they tried. After hearing that, the citizens promptly decide that maybe being unincorporated isn't actually that bad. In 10th place, we have Brandon, Florida at 116,000, and in 9th is Spring Hill, Florida at 118,000, which gets us into the mess that is Floridian cities. So, since the cities are similar, let's focus on Spring Hill, which I find more interesting. Basically, this is just one of Florida's many communities that weren't planned with big urban cities in mind, instead just being a big designed cash grab. So if you didn't know, I'll put it into a few sentences. Basically, AC was introduced in the 1950s, and people suddenly realized Florida could be a tropical paradise, and everyone thought they should move there. Land was also incredibly cheap, so developers bought up massive areas and sold them plot for plot, usually without any services, hence why they aren't their own cities. It was less so a government thing, and more so just them trying to get a lot of money really fast. In Spring Hill's situation, it was the Deltona Corporation that developed a pre-platted community with lots ready to go, no central downtown, and a quick and easy reliance on county services. So in this situation, it has to do with original historical factors. So now we're into 8th, and we have a new favorite community on the channel, the Woodlands, Texas. Now, if you've been watching our videos here, you know the Woodlands was created as a government-funded town to solve the 1960s housing crisis. And though the idea didn't last for long, it's what got it started. So the Woodlands has a population of 117,000, and it's known for its environmentally oriented design, being very forested with parkways all over. This one is a specifically interesting one though, because instead of just being a boring unincorporated town, it's a special purpose district, which I'll explain momentarily. But basically, it was founded on purpose to be a master planned unincorporated community, governed by a special body, the Woodlands Township. This is an organization that does everything a city does, but just isn't a real government, and they're fine being this way. Now, one thing that's important to mention is that incorporating a city usually results in higher taxation. Yucky, I know. So if you look around the Woodlands, you notice it's incredibly rich and economically oriented. And look, if someone watching this video wants to try and convince over 50% of these people to pay higher taxes, Have at it. But the last vote got less than 35% approval, so these citizens seem just fine as is. In 7th is Lehigh Acres, Florida, with a population of 127.3 thousand. And this is probably the worst case of the Florida pre-planned communities you can find. It has a great story. Similar to others, the Lehigh Corporation bought a ton of land and pretty much gridded out the entire thing. But it was literally just supposed to be a big scam for the corporation to get money. They advertised it as this beautiful paradise and sold the land plot by plot, but installed no services and forgot to mention that it was in the middle of a big nasty swamp. Some people set up shop here, others didn't, and not too long later the housing market crashed and Lehigh Acres was left in this nasty looking situation. You can see the streets there, with some of them having 1 or 2 houses. Yeah, that's what happens when you do stuff like this. 6th is Metairie, Louisiana, the suburb of New Orleans that has a population of 139,000. This one's definitely more of a confusing one, with less of an obvious reason as to why it's unincorporated. It's the second oldest city in NOLA, and in the early 1900s it was actually incorporated for 17 years for gas services. But once a different way to obtain gas was found, they went back to being unincorporated. I'm not entirely sure why this is, but the most likely idea is because of their location in Jefferson Parish. Jefferson Parish is basically a county, but importantly, it's the largest in the state by population, which also means it has the most power. If Metairie stays unincorporated, it's run by the parish, and they can mooch off of them for services. So that's likely why it is the way it is. Finally, we get into our fun run from 5th to 2nd place. Let me run through them all. In 5th, we have Paradise, Nevada at 186,000. In 4th, we have Sunrise Manor, Nevada at 199,000. At 3rd, we have Spring Valley, Nevada at 220,000. And at 2nd, we have Enterprise, Nevada at 232,000. Now, what's the obvious similarity here? Well, they're all located in Clark County, Nevada. Now, why do we think this is? Well, obviously, it has to do with the gambling industry. So let me break it down by creation. First, there was Paradise. Back in the mid-1900s, Los Angeles was planning to annex the growing gambling strip for its own revenue. This was an obvious idea, but gambling owners didn't want to pay taxes and abide by the city's restrictions. So in 1950, they created Paradise, Nevada, specifically to block annexation so the gambling owners could continue operating in the way they saw fit. The gambling industry continued, but a lot of it just had to do with Metro Las Vegas's crazy growth and the necessity for new towns. Clark County had become very powerful already because of Paradise. So next, Sunrise Manor was founded in 1957, and it was really easy to just have Clark County kind of run it. Then Spring Valley was next in 1981, and finally Enterprise in 1996, which brings us back to the land wars. It was founded specifically to stop Henderson from annexing the area, and obviously it worked. So now here we are with Las Vegas having 1 million unincorporated communities. So we then get to our top spot, which is Arlington, Virginia, at 234,000 residents. This brings us back to another already mentioned situation on this channel, which are Virginia independent cities. Let me make it really simple. Virginia designates its cities as separate bodies outside of counties with their own government, and they have quite a few of these across the state. Furthermore, it's very difficult to create a new city because of this system, so when somewhere outside of a city gains population, it's just unincorporated. Arlington is not a city, which may surprise some, but it's not even actually a town. It's technically a county, but since the county has no other incorporated areas within it, it works basically the same as a city, with its own services like police and even public transportation. So in this situation, it hasn't incorporated because it's incredibly difficult, and there's really no reason at all for it to be a city. So they're just fine continuing technically as a county. That's it though. I've always thought towns were some of the most interesting topics in American city governments because they aren't just those rural areas you might imagine. There's so much more involved here, and the different types of urban areas around the country fascinate me. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Big Golden Yoshi Fan, Bunny, James Cermak, Rob R, Big Pasty, Jameson Headley, Colonel Potter, Eric Hare, Sir JC17, Jerome McCall, The Big Fruit, Anders Quintero, Jesse Cook, J.O. Enrigo, The Autistic City Skylines Fan, Richard Law, Alexander Lichko, Laura Halliday, Charles Watson, Aiden Kyles, The Happy Hodag, Grant Dickerson, Midwest Rail Fan 88, Richard Horwell, Mick Kastner, D, Stephen Phillips, CJ Brick, Resident Contrarian, Hazev the Wolf, Brock Sanders, Stephen Priestman, SB Wilder, Florida Jake, Alex Williams, Mickey Martinoff, Kurt Ainsley, KMS162, Bryson, Rosewood 4, Darkbird, Wolfing 73, Snyder Schwein, Benjamin Whitings, and Ryan Devins. I appreciate you all and everything you do to the channel. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. All this money goes straight into my savings, so it just helps me save up for my future. So if you appreciate the content and you want to support me as a person, that's the best way to do it. Thank you.